Edward Molyneux was born in 1891 in London to an Irish family with deep Huguenot roots. You could almost imagine that elegant French lineage quietly weaving its way into the sense of refinement that would define his entire career. Unlike some designers who grew up with a needle in hand, Molyneux's first love was drawing. He started as an illustrator for The Sketch, one of those glossy society magazines that fed the hunger for tales of the rich and glamorous. His quick, graceful lines caught the attention of none other than Lucile, Lady Duff Gordon, who was herself a fashion superstar of the early 20th century. Bold, dramatic, one of the first to use live models instead of mannequins, and a master of self-promotion. She saw Molyneux's talent and brought him on as an assistant. In that glamorous, gossip-filled world of Lucile's salons, young Edward absorbed everything. The art of draping, the politics of the clientele, and the importance of discretion, which would later become one of his trademarks. But then, the war erupted, as it did for so many young men of his generation. Molyneux served in the British Army and suffered a terrible injury in combat, losing an eye. Some people would have been defeated by that, but he came back with even sharper vision for what he wanted to create. Clothes that made a woman look and feel powerful without drowning her in spectacle. When he opened his own house in Paris in 1919, he was still only 27, but the city was ready for him. Paris was restless after World War I. People were done with gloom, but they were also looking for a new kind of sophistication. Molyneux offered exactly that. He wasn't flamboyant like Poiret, who had draped the elite in harem pants and turbans, or shocking like Schiaparelli, who would soon cover gowns in surrealist motifs. Instead, he gave his clients quiet luxury, a phrase that didn't even exist back then, but he practically invented it. Think subtle grays, deep navies, soft creams, cut so immaculate they looked simple until you saw how they moved on the body. His gowns skimmed the figure rather than squeezed it. His day suits spoke of taste and breeding rather than money alone. The people who wore Molyneux were the ones who never needed to prove anything. Greta Garbo, who loved to disappear behind her sunglasses and be left alone, found a kindred spirit in his discreet genius. The Duchess of Windsor, the original style rebel who gave up a throne for love, adored him too. And Princess Marina, Duchess of Kent. She was photographed countless times in his sleek creations, which always balanced royal dignity with modern allure. What's fascinating is that Molyneux's clothes often reveal their genius only when you look closer. A sleeve cut just so, a collar that framed the face at the perfect angle, a skirt hem that hit the precise point to flatter the ankle. He knew that women of his world wanted to be seen, but never in an obvious, garish way. He once said he designed for the well-bred woman who scorns the extravagance of the showy, and that attitude made him both adored and sometimes dismissed. His critics, and he did have them, accused him of being too safe, too polite, not radical enough to stand beside Chanel, who was busy freeing women from corsets and reinventing modern chic, or Schiaparelli, who collaborated with Dali to slap giant lobsters and surreal zippers onto gowns. Some even argued that Molyneux's style was so subtle that it risked invisibility. But perhaps that was his quiet rebellion. At a time when so many designers competed for headlines, he wanted his clients to get the attention, not his clothes. He had a reputation for being a man of immaculate taste, but also a bit of a mystery. There are so many stories of how he navigated the social whirl of 1920s and 30s Paris with an air of detachment. Some say he was slightly aloof, a perfectionist who cared more about the cut of a sleeve than the cutthroat politics of the fashion press. He kept his salons beautiful yet calm. They weren't chaotic ateliers, but serene spaces where the elite could come and feel safe from prying eyes. When World War II arrived, Molyneux's business, like many couture houses, was forced to adapt. After the war, the world changed. Christian Dior's new look burst onto the scene with its dramatic full skirts and nipped waists. And for a moment, Molyneux's crisp understatement felt like a relic of a quieter time. He closed his couture house in the early 50s, but made a brief return with Studio Molyneux in London, an early attempt at luxury ready-to-wear, showing that his mind was always a step ahead, even if the market wasn't quite ready. What's so touching is that when he finally stepped away from fashion for good, he didn't throw himself into society or memoirs. He went back to painting. The same precision and sense of composition that defined his clothes flowed into his art. It's telling that he never seemed to care about fame the way some of his peers did. He was knighted later in life, a mark of how respected he was in Britain, but he always kept that aura of mystery. Today, if you flip through books on couture history, Molyneux might not have the pop culture punch of Chanel or the flamboyance of Dior, but real fashion lovers and museum curators know his sleek silhouettes and quiet mastery laid the groundwork for so much of what we now call timeless elegance. Designers like Hubert de Givenchy and even the minimalist wave of the 90s owe him a debt. In a world that increasingly confuses loudness with relevance, Molyneux's legacy feels like a reminder that the softest whisper of style can echo the longest. And maybe that's why, every so often, when someone rediscovers one of his perfectly cut coats or evening gowns in an old photograph or museum archive, they feel that same shock of recognition. The thrill of seeing that true elegance never has to shout.